All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something super important for how we learn, and that's self-regulated learning.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Basically, you're taking charge of your own learning journey, figuring out how you learn best.
Being the driver. Yeah.
Exactly. So we've got a bunch of research to go through today, a lot of it from a social cognitive perspective, and we really want to understand what makes someone a good self-regulated learner and why it matters so much in today's world where we have like information overload all the time.
Right. Constantly bombarded.
Yes. So much to learn, so little time. Yeah.
Exactly. And the idea is to equip you, our listener, with those insights that can help you learn more quickly, more effectively, and really the most out of your learning experiences.
Totally. So, to start, let's talk about where this research all began, which was really with an emphasis on self-control, like that basic ability to manage your actions,
Right. The foundations.
even when there's no one like looking over your shoulder telling you what to do.
hmm And the early research on this was really fascinating. They looked at, for example, how kids would resist doing something they knew would get them in trouble.
Oh, interesting.
That's basic self-control, right? Or they'd set their own internal rules,
Mm.
like deciding when they deserved a treat, even without an adult setting those
Oh,
boundaries.
I see.
So these early studies were often focused on how children learn self-control through observing others and through experiencing consequences for their actions.
Yeah, and I think we all remember like the classic marshmallow test.
Oh, absolutely, a class one.
Kids having to resist eating that marshmallow to get a bigger reward later. And it's like those early observations, often with kids watching adults, that showed how powerful those external examples could be.
Absolutely. The influence of models.
Yeah. Like,
Huh.
if a child saw an adult only reward themselves after completing a task, the child was more likely to adopt that same standard. It's like learning the rules of self-reward through observation.
Exactly. So there was this initial emphasis on how we learn this basic self-control from our interactions with the world around us. But then researchers started realizing, okay, there's more to this than just internalizing external rules.
It's more complex than that.
Right, there's a whole internal world that plays a crucial role.
Yeah. So, what are the thoughts, the feelings that keep that self-control going even when those external pressures aren't there?
Right, so think about someone learning to play the piano.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe their teacher encourages them, but what keeps them coming back day after day, to practice?
Right. The intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. So researchers started digging into these internal factors, and they found things like, for example, the sensory feedback, like the enjoyment of the music itself,
Makes sense?
and then the anticipated future outcomes, like maybe imagining yourself performing on stage one day.
Oh, yeah.
But crucially, they also found that there are self-evaluative consequences. So feeling proud after mastering a new piece, or maybe feeling disappointed in yourself if a practice session doesn't go well.
It's like that inner critic.
Exactly. And Bandura actually argued that this self-evaluation, where you're judging your performance against your own standards, that's likely the most powerful and long-lasting force behind self-control.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Because it's
Yep.
coming from within.
Yeah. Now, back in 1969, Bandura made this really interesting point. He said, look, we're kind of ignoring how these learned behaviors actually transfer to new situations.
Generalization, a key piece.
Right. Like just because someone shows self-control in one area doesn't mean they'll automatically apply it everywhere else. So how does that happen?
Right. And this is where we need to talk about the distinction between basic self-control and true self-regulation.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
Yeah. So Bandura gave this example of a tennis player.
I love his examples. They're always so clear.
Right. They can perfect their forehand in practice, showing self-control, by working on their technique consistently. But self-regulation comes into play during a match where they have to assess, okay, is this forehand actually working against my opponent? Maybe I need to adjust my strategy.
Right. It's not just about performing the skill, it's about adapting.
Exactly. It's about evaluating, adapting, and taking charge of your approach based on the situation.
So how do we develop this more advanced form of self-regulation? Bandura had some key ideas about this.
Yeah. Well, first you talk about the importance of models. So those people around you, teachers, mentors, who demonstrate those behaviors, those standards you want to internalize.
Right, having good examples.
Absolutely. Also, setting clear expectations for performance, maybe even with some incentives to help you get started.
That makes sense.
But it goes beyond just seeing good examples and getting rewards.
Got to be more active.
Exactly. Bandura emphasized teaching those self-regulatory skills directly. So, learning to set your own goals, how to track your progress, towards those goals, even how to give yourself positive reinforcement when you do well. He also talked about the role of your peer group, your friends, your family, in supporting those developing self-regulatory abilities. And what's been shown to be super effective is this idea of actively practicing a skill with guidance.
Ah, like actually doing it.
Yeah, like participant modeling or mastery modeling, where you're not just watching, you're doing.
Interesting. And related to that, there was all this research on abstract modeling, and this is where things get really interesting, I think.
Oh yeah, this is where we move beyond just mimicking specific actions.
Exactly. It's not just about copying someone word for word. It's about observing them and figuring out those underlying principles, those rules, those strategies they're using, and then applying those to totally new situations.
Exactly. So think about a kid figuring out a grammar rule just by listening to people speak correctly.
Oh, that's a great example.
Right. Or, working out a strategy for solving a puzzle just by watching someone else do it.
Ah, I see.
And then they can take that rule, that strategy, and use it in a whole new situation.
So it's like higher level learning.
It really is. It
Yeah.
shows that we're not just passively copying. We're extracting meaning, making connections, and generalizing that learning.
That's fascinating. Okay, now let's fast forward a bit to 1974, where we meet Thorson and Mahoney. These guys really solidified this whole social cognitive perspective on self-regulation.
Oh, a huge contribution. Their book was a real turning point because it moved us away from that older idea of willpower as this kind of vague, mysterious force.
Right. And they also saw the limitations of pure behaviorism.
Yeah. While they appreciated the contributions of behaviorism, with its emphasis on rewards and punishments, they felt it didn't quite capture the internal cognitive processes involved in self-regulation.
So what did they propose instead?
Well, they put forward what they called a triadic model of self-control.
Triadic, okay, so 3 parts.
Exactly. 3 key components. First, you've got environmental planning. So that's like actively organizing your surroundings to support your goals, creating that conducive environment.
Okay, so like setting up a dedicated study space.
Exactly. Then there's behavioral programming.
What does that involve?
That's more about setting up those self-imposed consequences.
Yeah.
Like, rewarding yourself after a productive study session.
Ah, so
Yeah.
using consequences strategically.
Right. But the real game changer here, the real insight, was their emphasis on covert self-control.
Covert, so what's hidden beneath the surface?
Exactly. It's all those internal things happening, your thoughts, your self-talk, your emotions. Sorsen and Mahoney recognized that we're constantly having these inner experiences, and we use internal strategies to manage them.
Right, like talking ourselves through a challenge.
Precisely. And they said that our ability to manage our actions is deeply tied to what we know, how we understand our situation, and our goals.
It's like our knowledge and our thinking are key.
Exactly. Now, their perspective also helped explain why we even need self-control in the first place.
Oh, that's interesting. Why?
They argued that it's often because our immediate desires clash with our longer-term goals, like wanting to watch TV when you should be studying for that big exam. Classic conflict.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right, so that's where self-control kicks in. And they really emphasized that it's about consciously setting those long-term goals and then choosing the self-control methods to get there.
So it's an active choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this focus on choice and personal control, it really paved the way for Bandura's later work on human agency, which is that capacity we have to influence our own lives.
And self-efficacy, right.
Exactly. That belief in your own ability to succeed, which is so central to self-regulation. And it was really Thorson and Mahoney's work that helped to lay the foundation for understanding how crucial that belief is.
Now, it's fascinating to see that even back then, there were efforts to help students develop self-control in schools.
Right. Some of these early interventions started with more external methods, like having students track their study time or teachers rewarding good behavior.
But the goal was always to shift that control back to the students.
Exactly, to make it their own. There's a great example with an 8th grade girl in a history class. Initially, she was just asked to record how much she was studying during class.
Just keeping track.
Yeah, a simple thing, but it led to a significant lasting increase in her study time, even after she stopped the self-recording. And another study with disruptive 10-year-olds found that they could become just as effective as their teachers at rewarding their own good behavior. It's like they internalized that ability.
They owned it.
Yeah, they took charge. So these early studies show that self-control wasn't just something you're born with. It could be learned and strengthened.
Okay, so now let's talk about Bandura's more formal model of self-regulation, which he presented in 1977.
Right. So he laid out these 3 key components. performance observation, judgmental processes, and self-reactive responses.
So first you observe what you're doing. Then you judge it against some standard.
And then you react internally to that judgment. And it's this element of evaluation, this judgment, that Bandura really brought to the forefront. It's not just passively observing, it's actively evaluating your actions in relation to some benchmark. And those benchmarks can vary. They could be your own personal goals, they could be how you see others performing, or even how you explain your own successes and failures.
So we're always comparing ourselves in some way.
In a sense, yes, we're constantly evaluating ourselves against something. And this brings us to a really crucial concept, self-efficacy.
That's the belief in your ability to succeed. And this is really central to this whole conversation about self-regulated learning.
It's absolutely fundamental, and what's important to understand is just how much this belief impacts us. It influences how much effort we put in, how persistent we are when things get tough. It shapes the thoughts that run through our minds when we face a challenge. It even influences how vulnerable we are to stress. Right. And it's not just a general feeling of confidence. It's really domain specific. So you might feel very capable when it comes to writing, but less confident about public speaking, for example.
Makes sense. And this ties back to what you mentioned earlier about Bandura's distinction between self-efficacy and outcome expectations.
Yes, exactly. It's not just about believing a certain action will lead to a certain result. It's about whether you believe you can successfully perform that action in the first place.
Okay, so how do these beliefs about our own capabilities actually influence our self-regulation?
Right. Well, Bandura identified two key ways we motivate ourselves when it comes to self-regulation. First, there's understanding and representing those external contingencies. So that's like recognizing that if you study hard, you're more likely to get a good grade.
Makes sense.
But then there's self-motivation, which is about setting your own goals and evaluating yourself against those goals.
So it's like that internal drive, that inner motivation.
Exactly. And when it comes to setting goals, Bandura found that goals that are very specific and close in time, those are far more effective than vague long-term aspirations.
It's like having those clear milestones along the way.
Precisely. It's easier to stay focused and motivated when you have that concrete, immediate target.
Now, all of these pieces fit into Bandura's broader theory of triadic reciprocal determinism.
Oh yes, the famous triad.
So it's basically saying that your personal factors, your behaviors, and the environment, they're all constantly influencing each other.
In a dynamic interplay.
Yeah. So it's not just a one-way street where the environment shapes you.
No, it's a two-way street. Our behavior actually has to engage the environment for it to influence us. It's a constant back and forth.
Okay, so after Bandura's work, there was this huge surge of research on self-efficacy, all sorts of areas.
Absolutely. People were looking at health behaviors, clinical problems, workplace success, and of course, a lot of focus on academic learning.
Right. So in the context of learning, what did this research show?
Well, for instance, there's that study by Bandura and Shunk in 1981 that showed the power of goal setting in math learning. Kids who set daily goals for themselves were way more motivated and learned more effectively. And Zimmerman and Ringel, in their study, they found that even just watching someone else approach a problem with optimism could boost kids' belief in their own ability to solve similar problems and make them more persistent.
So even just observing someone else's positive attitude can have an impact.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that those feelings of confidence could actually generalize to new, different tasks.
So it's not just limited to that one specific situation.
Right. You can have this ripple effect. Now, in 1986, Bandura summarized all his research on self-efficacy. And it was really a landmark moment. He highlighted the strong connection between how capable people believe they are and their actual performance.
So our beliefs about ourselves really matter.
They really do. But he also made it clear that believing you can do something isn't the same as actually having the skills. So there's this great study by Collins that showed that students with the same math ability could have totally different levels of confidence in their math skills.
Interesting. So ability isn't everything.
No. And that difference in confidence then affected how they approached problems and how well they performed.
Wow. So confidence can actually influence how we learn.
Exactly. It's a powerful force. And Bandura pointed out that accurately judging your self-efficacy depends on being able to assess both your own abilities and the demands of the task.
Which can be tricky.
Yeah. Especially for novice learners who are still figuring things out. They might not have a good grasp of how difficult something is or how well they're actually doing.
Right. So they might not have a good gauge of their own self-efficacy.
Exactly. So Bandura actually refined his model a bit based on these insights. He renamed performance to self-observation to emphasize that we don't just record our actions passively.
Okay, so there's more to it than that.
Right. Our existing beliefs about ourselves, they actually filter what we pay attention to, how we interpret things, and how we remember things.
It's like we have these biases shaping how we see our own performance.
Exactly. And Bandura also highlighted the importance of the environment in shaping self-regulation. How it can support the development of self-regulation by providing good examples and support, but also how the environment can either activate or discourage our self-regulatory efforts.
So the context we're in matters a lot.
Absolutely. And this perspective really contrasts with theories that focus purely on internal factors like conscience. And the work of Mischel, who showed that our behavior is often very situation-specific, really lends support to this social cognitive view. What we think and do isn't consistent across all situations. It depends on the specific environment we're in.
Right, so our self-regulation can vary depending on the context.
Exactly. Now, Bandura identified these three types of cognitive self-regulators: how we represent and use knowledge, how we use thoughts as symbolic tools, and our intentions and goals. And to illustrate this, he talked about how when we're learning a new skill, we're often very focused on each step.
Like we're breaking it down.
Yeah, very detail-oriented. But as we become more skilled, our attention shifts more towards the overall outcome. However, if something unexpected happens, we might go right back to focusing on the details again.
It's like go into troubleshooting mode.
Exactly. Now, it's important to remember that just knowing how to solve a problem isn't the same as being able to do it smoothly and effectively in a real-world situation.
Ah, so there's a difference between knowledge and skill.
Right, like you might know that you're supposed to make eye contact when giving a speech, but feeling comfortable and natural doing it takes practice and builds that sense of self-efficacy.
Practice makes perfect, as they say.
And then there's the role of intentions, which are those determinations to act. Bandura argued that our intentions really depend on our ability to envision the future consequences of our actions and how we'll feel about those outcomes. And again, those specific, attainable, challenging goals, coupled with our belief that we can achieve them, those are the most powerful drivers.
So it's about having a clear vision and believing in ourselves.
Exactly. And when you consider all these factors, you can see how this triadic view of self-regulation gives us a much richer understanding than just focusing on willpower or external rewards and punishments.
It's a much more nuanced perspective.
Absolutely. It accounts for the social origins of our self-regulatory abilities, the ongoing influence of our social context, and the essential role of our own thinking processes.
Okay, so let's bring all of this down to earth and talk about how it relates to learning in school.
Right. So self-regulated academic learning is about you, as a student, taking ownership of your learning, especially when things get tough.
Becoming a self-directed learner.
Exactly. And this involves three key aspects: metacognitive aspects, motivational aspects, and behavioral aspects.
Okay, let's unpack those. So, on the metacognitive side, it's things like planning your learning, monitoring your understanding, and evaluating how effective your learning strategies are.
Right. Like thinking about how you're thinking.
Exactly. Then there's the motivational side, which is all about your beliefs in your own capabilities, your self-efficacy, and how committed you are to your goals.
So believing in yourself and having that drive.
And then there are the behavioral aspects. This is about actively choosing and organizing your learning environment and using those effective learning strategies.
So putting it all into action.
Exactly. Now, it's helpful to distinguish between self-regulatory processes like monitoring your understanding and the specific strategies you might use to support those processes, like keeping a study journal.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. And self-regulated learners are very conscious of how these strategies impact their learning, and they actively choose those that work best for them, which in turn boosts their self-efficacy and fuels their motivation to take charge.
It becomes this positive cycle.
Absolutely. And all the research really backs this up. This idea that using these self-regulated learning strategies has a huge positive impact on academic achievement. Like Zimmerman and Martinez Pons, back in 1986, they identified 14 different types of these strategies.
13, wow.
Yeah, things like organizing information, setting goals, seeking help when needed. And they found they could predict students' academic placement with like 93% accuracy based on how often students reported using those strategies.
That's incredible. So these strategies really make a difference.
They do, and they later confirmed this in a follow-up study, comparing student reports to teacher ratings and standardized test scores. And their findings suggest that being a self-regulated learner goes beyond just knowing the content. It's a skill in itself.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you learn.
Exactly. But here's a crucial point. Just knowing about these strategies isn't always enough. You need to actively monitor whether they're actually helping you learn. Research on metamemory, which is awareness of your own memory processes, has shown that just because you know a strategy exists doesn't mean you'll use it effectively.
So awareness isn't the same as application.
Right. And researchers like Presley have found that even experienced learners don't always naturally check how well their strategies are working.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it seems like children's ability to benefit from monitoring their learning strategies develops gradually over time.
So younger kids might need more support in this area.
Exactly. Now, research by Gatala really showed how important it is to explicitly teach students how to monitor their learning. When students were taught to pay attention to their performance, to connect their outcomes to the specific strategies they used, and to make decisions about their strategy use based on this feedback, they were much more likely to stick with effective strategies.
So it's about making those connections and being reflective.
Precisely. And Burkowski and his colleagues have done some really interesting work on what they call strategy attributions, which is essentially believing that your successes are a direct result of using effective learning strategies. They found a strong link between these beliefs, self-efficacy, intrinsic motivation, and academic performance.
So believing that your effort is paying off really matters.
It does. And their work comparing successful students with struggling students was particularly enlightening. Those high-achieving students showed a clear connection between their abilities, their belief that their strategies were working, and positive outcomes like self-esteem and reading performance. But this connection wasn't as strong for the lower-achieving students.
I see. So their beliefs about their strategies played a role.
Exactly. And their intervention study showed that teaching reading strategies along with encouraging students to attribute their successes to their effort and their use of those strategies was much more effective than just teaching the strategies alone.
So it's about that mindset shift, believing that your actions are making a difference.
Right. And the key takeaway here is that being aware of how well your learning strategies are working not only boosts your motivation to keep using them, but also leads to better learning outcomes. Believing that your strategies are effective and that your effort matters, that's a powerful combination.
Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice? How do we help students develop these beliefs and these skills?
Well, researchers like Shunk and Zimmerman have developed training programs based on these social learning principles, incorporating things like goal setting, attribution training, modeling, and self-verbalization to help students improve both their learning and their self-efficacy.
So it's about giving them the tools and the mindset.
Exactly. And there's a really interesting study by Shunk in 1981 that looked at the effects of modeling and attributional feedback in math learning. They found that while watching someone else successfully solve problems did increase students' self-efficacy, just telling them that their success was due to effort didn't have much of an impact.
Interesting. So effort alone wasn't enough.
No, but their level of self-efficacy itself was a major factor in how persistent they were and how well they learned. And this has big implications, especially for students who might struggle with self-doubt.
It's about building that belief in themselves.
Absolutely. And there's also a fascinating connection between self-efficacy and intrinsic motivation, that inner drive to learn. A study by Bloom and Zimmerman found that when students were given rewards that signaled they were good at something, it was much more effective in boosting both their self-efficacy and their intrinsic motivation compared to rewards just given for task completion.
So it's about feeling competent, not just completing the task.
Exactly. And another interesting study by Zimmerman and Martinez-Pons looked at gifted students compared to regular students across different grades. They found that gifted students consistently reported higher levels of self-efficacy in both math and verbal abilities, and they also used a wider range of learning strategies. And the specific strategies they used were actually linked to their confidence in those specific areas.
Again, highlighting that self-regulation is often very domain-specific.
Right. You might be a great self-regulated learner in one area, but need more support in another.
Okay, so what's the big takeaway from all this research?
Well, it seems pretty clear that having a stronger belief in your learning abilities fuels your internal motivation and leads to greater academic success. But it's not just about knowing a bunch of learning strategies. It's about actively monitoring whether they're working for you and truly believing that your effort in using those strategies is what's leading to positive results. And this really reinforces that triadic view of self-regulation, where your beliefs, actions, and environment all play a crucial role.
So it's about that interplay of all these factors.
Exactly. Now, this brings us to a proposed social cognitive model of self-regulated academic learning and achievement. And the key concept here is what's called a strategic control loop.
Okay, what's that all about?
Well, it basically captures the idea that your personal beliefs, behaviors, and environment, they're all constantly influencing each other in this ongoing cycle.
Yeah.
You're using learning strategies, and as you're doing that, you're paying attention to what's happening around you, what you're thinking and feeling, and how your actions are playing out. And all of this feedback then influences your self-efficacy and the decisions you make about which strategies to use in the future.
So it's like we're constantly adjusting course based on what we're experiencing.
Exactly. It's a dynamic, self-directed process.
Yeah.
And it's important to note that this isn't just something for those who are already great learners. Even when others, like teachers or parents, try to support someone's self-regulation, those efforts often work because they influence the learner's self-efficacy and their motivation to take control of their learning.
It's about empowering the learner.
Right. So to really break this down, we can look at those key factors that contribute to self-regulated learning. On the environmental side, we've got things like the physical learning space, the nature of the task, external outcomes like grades, and the resources that are available, both material and social.
And then on the personal side.
Right. So on the self side, we've got your existing knowledge, including both facts and your understanding of how to learn effectively, your self-efficacy beliefs, your goals and intentions, your metacognitive skills like planning and monitoring, and even your emotional state, which we talked about earlier.
Right, because emotions can really impact our learning.
Absolutely. And then there are the behavioral influences. So that's the actual learning activities you engage in, like self-monitoring, self-evaluation, making adjustments to your strategies, and also how you structure your learning environment to support your goals.
So it's about taking action and shaping your environment.
Exactly. Now let's dig a little deeper into the role of knowledge. So we've got declarative knowledge, which is basically all the factual information you know. But then there's self-regulative knowledge, which is your understanding of how to learn effectively, the strategies you can use, and when to use them. And these two types of knowledge really work hand in hand.
Okay, so like if I understand the concept of photosynthesis, that's declarative knowledge. But if I know how to create a good study plan to learn about photosynthesis, that's self-regulative knowledge.
Exactly. Great example. And then there's metacognitive functioning, which operates on a couple of levels. First, there's that general level of analyzing a task, planning your approach, deciding on strategies. This depends on all those other factors we've been discussing. And then there's the more specific level of behavior control, where you're actually managing your attention, executing your chosen strategies, persisting when things get tough, and monitoring your progress in real time.
So it's like that mental discipline, that ability to stay on track.
Exactly. And those long-term goals you set really influence these metacognitive decisions. If you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve down the road, you're more likely to put in the work, the planning, the monitoring needed to get there. And this is where your aspirations, your metacognitive skills, your self-efficacy, and your knowledge of strategies all come together.
It's like everything's interconnected.
Right. And interestingly, even your emotional state can have a big impact on your ability to self-regulate. Like feeling really anxious can make it harder to focus during a test. And as we talked about, low self-efficacy and anxiety can feed off each other, making it even harder to engage those helpful metacognitive processes and set challenging goals.
Like a negative spiral.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about those behavioral influences, self-observation, self-judgment, and self-reaction, those are all trainable skills. Something as simple as encouraging students to keep track of their study habits, for instance, has been shown to have a positive impact on their learning, motivation, and self-efficacy.
So even small changes in behavior can make a difference.
Absolutely. And when it comes to self-judgment, it's not just about comparing yourself to others. It's also about your own level of confidence, your goals, and your understanding of what good performance looks like. External factors, like seeing how others do or social norms, can also influence your standards.
So it's a mix of internal and external factors.
Right. And self-reactions are those adjustments you make based on your observations and judgments. While some of these might be automatic, self-regulated learners make a more conscious effort to modify their behavior or their learning strategies to improve their performance.
It's about being proactive and taking control.
Exactly. And then there's environmental structuring, where students actively shape their learning environment to make it more supportive, minimizing distractions, organizing materials, and gathering the resources they need.
So it's about creating that optimal learning space.
And it's great to see these principles being applied in real-world settings, like that asthma education program at Columbia University, which actually trains young people in these 4 key self-regulatory activities to help them manage their condition more effectively.
So it's about applying these principles to different areas of life.
Absolutely. Now, when we zoom out and look at environmental influences more broadly, the role of socialization is crucial. We learn how to self-regulate through observing others, receiving guidance, and having social support. And participant or mastery modeling is a great example of how this works in practice. Things like verbal encouragement and direct assistance from teachers or mentors also play a big role.
It's about having those supportive relationships.
Right. And ultimately, it's all about how these 3 sets of factors, personal, behavioral, and environmental, constantly influence each other. Self-regulation isn't fixed. It varies depending on the situation, your effort, and the outcomes you experience. As Bandura pointed out, these influences aren't always equal. For example, a really restrictive learning environment might limit your opportunities to develop your self-regulation skills.
So the context can either help or hinder our progress.
Exactly. Now, to really wrap this all up, your ability to be a self-regulated learner in academic settings depends on how effectively you use strategies that integrate all 3 of these types of influences to achieve your learning goals. It's about using your internal processes to strategically manage your behavior and your learning environment through these.